afternoon, everyone. It's 12 o'clock on Wednesday, the 20th of May. Welcome to this webinar, where we would like to unpack the FSCA Conduct Standards for financial institutions. A little bit of a backdrop to what led to this webinar was the National Treasury publishing the draft National Consumer Financial Education Policy for comment earlier in April. The comment period closed in mid of May this year. And this policy places specifically financial education at the center of market conduct. And financial institutions are now to be expected to integrate this into their core business and demonstrate measurable outcomes and in the processes and so forth. So there's quite a significant shift in how we see consumer financial education gets positioned in South Africa, now more as a core market conduct requirement compared to the previous discretionary CSI type of activity. If you think around that from the financial education requirement in the financial sector code and so forth. We've also seen a clear move from typical spend and reach type of measurement to more measurable outcomes that gets measured, and also measuring behavioral change in that regard. And importantly to this is the financial sector FSCA Conduct Standards for financial education that's been published last year and came into effect in March this year. And that sits towards the heart of this policy as well. With me for this webinar, I have some learned colleagues in this case. Berenice Lesheku. Berenice is a BE transformation specialist with very specific focus on consumer financial education and also CSI initiatives at Diversify. Zuleika Bray. Zuleika is Director and Practice Head for Financial Empowerment and Monitoring and Evaluation at DNA Economics. And then Adrian Bertrand, who is the co-founder and practice head for ESG education at Six Capitals. All of these entities are part of the Alternative Prosperity Group, and we aim to make impact in the world out there from different perspectives and different disciplines. I'm Anton van Geest. I'm from Diversify, BE technical expert on transformation and BE legislation in general. For this webinar for today, we would like to start off with unpacking, giving you an overview of these conduct standards, providing you some insight into the compliance considerations, and Berenice and Zuleika will lead this discussion. Very specifically, Zuleika will focus more on the monitoring and evaluation and reporting requirements, Berenice on all of the other general type of discussions. That will then lead into a panel discussion where we will have a discussion around this conduct standards, the practical implications, what is the practical examples that you could consider to take this into account. And we hope this will really give you some insight into furthering with this. We will not take a Q&A session today due to the limited time that we have scoped for this session, but you're welcome to post questions and we will then connect with you afterwards. Without further ado, I would like to Berenice and Zuleika to take us forward into this session. Berenice, Zuleika, please let me know, can you see the slide?
Yes, Anton.
Great.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anton, for that introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to take you through just high level through the actual conduct standards that has been published by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. We'll refer to them as the FSCA in this webinar. Just in terms of the background, so the FSCA released a draft conduct standards or draft conduct standard in April 2023, and we then had to comment, and industry engagement was also, people were just involved in giving some background information and comments as to how they would see this unfold. And then on that same year, in May, they had to then submit their comments. The actual standard that we'll be discussing today was published on 26 March 2025 to become effective 12 months after the publication. So it actually came into effect on 26 March 2026. So this year on 26 March 2026. And so the standard just forms part of the FSCA's broad objective of improving customer outcomes and strengthening financial literacy in the country. The purpose of the standard, we know that a lot of financial institutions have various financial literacy or financial education programs. And I think with the FSCA, they just wanted to make sure that the financial customers genuinely benefit from these initiatives, that it promote informed and responsible financial decision making at the end of the day, and for these financial customers to understand the products and the services and the risk thereof. But most importantly, to make sure that there are proper governance, oversight, monitoring and reporting structures that comes with all these financial education programs that we're implementing. So the ultimate goal is just to make sure that the customers of these financial services products are protected throughout the financial sector. We'll hear a lot about we'll see in the conduct standards the reference made to financial education and financial education initiatives. So it's specific, the initiatives for financial education that improves the customer's understanding of financial products, the concepts, the risks, and the opportunities. The financial education initiatives, same alignment, same understanding. But also when we talk about, and we'll hear later, when we talk about the GN 500, we speak a lot about the initiatives, which is there to make sure there's education and awareness, and strictly to make sure that there's no product promotion in the education that we do. And then the target audience for the specific financial education and financial initiatives would be women, youth. It would be small black-owned businesses, customers, any customers that has low income levels, vulnerable groups. And yeah, like we said previously, we must just make sure that people understand the content of the financial literacy programs, that it's accessible, and that it is appropriate for the specific target market that we're aiming to develop and educate. So please pardon our slides. So our slides are according to the slide deck, but you'll see in the standards, we have specific numbering and specific numbering to what actual is that we need to look at and report on with regards to the conduct standards. And the first one would be the governance arrangements. Financial institutions should make sure that they have clear governance and oversight over the financial literacy or education initiatives. So there's a lot of work that needs to go in there. We can't just decide tomorrow we wake up, here's a financial literacy program, and we're taking it to the world out there. We need to have a lot of oversight arrangements, and that would include appropriate systems, policies, internal controls as well. This is all in support of compliance. So when we do develop new financial literacy programs, and with the existing programs, you should always bear that in mind. All those that implement financial literacies, whether it's external service providers or we doing it in-house, we need to make sure that they are industry or their subject matter experts, that they do have the necessary knowledge about the subject matter or the subject at hand. Yeah, and even if we do use third-party service providers, the compliance, the measured entity is still accountable for the compliance and must make sure that that has been taken care of. Okay, great. Anton, you can go to the next slide. When it comes to the design and development of the financial education initiatives, we must make sure that it's objective and it's impartial and it's based on research. You'll hear they always say that we need to make sure that even the target market that we are looking at, that we know the target market and we know what their needs are. Yeah, and so we encourage positive financial behavior such as savings, budgeting, debt management, and responsible borrowing. So those are some of the topics that we need to focus on, and make sure that if we do choose a target market, that the delivery method that we use, it's appropriate for that specific target market. So if we're saying we're choosing people from an old age home, it would be better if we go there in person, instead of asking them to log onto a computer, or their cell phones to do a virtual virtual training with them. So we must always take into account the brand limitations when it comes to our financial education. Make sure that it's not directed to marketing and sales, but rather the content must be educational in nature. And yeah, so also make sure that we it's relevant to the target market and also it is effective as well. In terms of location and logistics, there are various forms of delivering these specific financial education initiatives, and we must make sure that it's always suitable, the platforms that we're using, and effective for learning and engagement. If it's face-to-face training, we must make sure that the venues that we choose is in a safe area, it's accessible for the specific target market or the target audience that we're inviting to attend. So we would not want to say that we, for instance, targeting people in Shoshanguve, but we want them to travel all the way to Tembisa. We also consider that we do not want them to spend any money to get to the training venues as well. If we use virtual platforms, we must always make sure that it's accessible as well. Like the example that I've mentioned previously, that the right target audience will be able to access those virtual platforms as well. Yeah, logistical arrangements in general, language, if we have a specific target market, if we have trainers that is capable to educate in that specific language, that for that specific area that they're educating in, it would be great to have that. Technology access for virtual also. And then contingency plans, this is a big one that we normally maybe don't always include in our plans. And I normally use the example of load shedding as well. We do not have load shedding now, but in some instances, in some areas, we have load reductions. So if you do get to venues, make sure that you do some research on that venues, whether they do get load reductions, what are we going to do in case they do have load reductions? Also, you as the facilitator and presenter in your area, make sure that you work around those issues. Service delivery protests as well, when we do go to venues. Now with the floods in the Western Cape, I'm sure a lot of those, a lot of planned interventions have needed to be cancelled. But there are always some things that are beyond our control. But with the conduct standard, what the FSCA wants to see that you do put some measurements in place for the don'ts and the do's. If something happens, the unforeseen circumstances, that we do think about it and that we make sure that we don't have any interruptions. Measurability and monitoring evaluation, I would ask Zuleika just to go through this for us. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Bernice, and good afternoon, everyone. So just on the two sections in the FSCA Conduct Standard that focuses on measurability and monitoring and evaluation. Section 6 in the Conduct Standard is very specific around what needs to be measured for consumer financial education programs that are being done. And the key thing here is that the standard is moving away just from output numbers in terms of reach and being quite clear in terms of the measurement of effectiveness as well as impact. So that's not to say that reach is not important. It is the first output of a program that we deliver in the CFE space in terms of the numbers we've reached, but they do want us to now go a little bit further into effectiveness. And if I were to look at effectiveness, we're talking about the short-term and medium-term outcomes that result from our programs, things like improved awareness, improved knowledge, improved skill, and to some extent behavioral change. And then they also talk about the measurement of impact, and that is where we're talking about the broader the impact that's achieved. And we are speaking about things like financial resilience, increase in savings, reduction in over-indebtedness, etc. But the pathway to those changes are slightly longer, which is why they sit under impact instead of outcomes. So the standard is quite clear that measurability is there and it must be done. And then the next section in the FSCA Conduct Standard talks about how it should be done. And monitoring and evaluation is a methodology on how you can measure and then report, which is section 9, on what is being done in the CFE programs. Importantly here, the FSCA Conduct Standard is quite clear that we need to measure effectiveness and report on that. We need to identify areas for improvement, and we need to then use those learnings to improve the program or the next iteration of the program or future programs that are being delivered. So if we just look at those objectives within the conduct standard, it actually doesn't just talk to monitoring and evaluation, it talks to monitoring, evaluation, and learning. So MEL rather than just M&E. Thanks, Bernice.
Thank you, Zuleika. I'm sure this is always a headache for everyone. I know that's a headache for clients when it comes to the GN 500 and the compliance issues around that, the branding and marketing restrictions. The same with the conduct standards. Unfortunately, there's branding and marketing restrictions. We do say we do not want people not to use their brand, right? But there must be limitations. And obviously the same with the GN 500, the reason for you that they require you to use your brand it's for you to take accountability for the content that you put out there and the quality of the content. So the same as with GN 500, the platforms should not be used for excessive branding or advertising. A lot of fights we have with financial institutions sending their brokers and their financial advisors to these training sessions, and specifically saying as well as we do not want people to market and sell their financial products during these initiatives. So that's the reason. We want people to be educated and make informed financial decisions and not to be bombarded and bullied into taking financial products. The educational content must be unbiased, balanced, and it must be customer focused at all times. So it must be very generic. I've already said brand visibility. We should be able to show our brand with taking the limitations into account. And the main focus should really remain to empower the customers in every way possible. So there is reporting, and I think this is where people have some anxiety, the reporting to the authority. So there are reporting requirements, and so guidance on the reporting requirements will as communicated or be communicated, how to submit your reports and the content requirements. And I mean, the FSCA must have some line of sight as to how the conduct standards are performing or how people are implementing it, hence the reporting requirements as well. And so the authority aims just to ensure that the initiatives are educational, it's measurable, it's properly governed, and it's not marketing campaigns. And as we report on these initiatives and how we implement it, then the FSCA would also see how things are being done in the financial sector. Yeah, we can move forward. So just some maybe recommendations on best practices for financial institutions. For those that haven't started yet, maybe preparing already. It has the 12 months, it is effective already. It's never too late. Establish reporting frameworks, standard templates, maybe internal governance structures. It's very important, as with the compliance that we do with the GN 500, to have evidence files. Make sure that you have all the material that's going to be needed for you, or the evidence that's going to be needed for your reporting, including attendance registers, M&E reports, training material, all those kind of things. And do regular audits in between when you do the implementation. Do not wait until the end of the implementation cycle. Do regular check-ins and regular internal audits so that you can identify the gaps as early as possible. And yeah, like we said previously, it still needs to be focused on consumer protection, financial inclusion, strong governance, accountability, and to measure the effectiveness of the program as well. I think that was my last slide, Anton.
That's correct. Thank you, Berenice and Zuleika, for taking us through the conduct standards. I think some of you will know already, but you hear that there's obviously a different shift actually to integrate this education into the customer journey to demonstrate obviously impact and improve financial capability of your consumers, your clients, and to also align it to the initiatives with national priorities and also, coordination structures and the likes actually. So moving into that, I would want us to go into a more panel discussion around that. And Berenice, first question that I would like to pose to you is, you've mentioned now GN 500 fairly loosely in this document. Tell us a little bit about the guidance note 500 or GN 500, which was published by the Financial Sector Transformation Council as part of the Financial Sector Code. And yeah, how is that applicable still with the conduct standards from the FSCA? Give us a little bit of a level left there, please.
Yeah, thank you, Anton. I always say to clients, if you know the guidance note 500, it's going to be very easy to implement the conduct standard. There's a lot of overlapping in the requirements. And so the GN 500 is a supporting guidance note in terms of the financial sector code, where they're required to spend on consumer education. It gives guidance as to how your consumer education initiatives should be implemented. And if you tick all the boxes, you get your BE recognition on the FSC scorecard. It does have, like I said, overlapping requirements with the conduct standard. This conduct standard is more powerful regulations, and it's also a huge guidance for the FSCA to see how the financial sector is performing in terms of their delivery of financial literacy programs. It kind of formalizes and strengthens what already is in GN 500. And it also kind of encouraging good practices throughout the financial sector as well. The GN 500 is a compliance document on its own, and it's not going anywhere unless things change in the financial sector's codes. We still need to comply with them with that for all consumer education programs. And yeah, it's also strict compliance regulation or a document or practice. Yeah, that we need to make sure that we adhere to.
Thank you, Berenice. Adding to that, for those of you attending and reporting on the financial sector codes, you will know that there's a target as part of socioeconomic development to contribute to consumer financial education initiatives in different forms. With all of the standards, and you might want to obviously rather do it externally or have some internal programs that you're running, for which you will then need some
are people-centered, pioneering, honest, accountable, dependable, responsible. We are diversifying. Partner with us to stretch thinking, push boundaries, and drive measurable, lasting change.